Good evening, everybody. My name is Shane Strange. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm the Artistic Director here at Queensland Poetry. At Queensland Poetry, we want to acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people on which we operate and their continuing connection to land. And we respectfully acknowledge that all our work takes place on the unceded lands of these countries. We pay respects to the elders past and present, and recognise the integral role that Indigenous people play in Queensland's artistic and creative life. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we have two, I think, really exciting contemporary poets, Lucy Van and Marjon Mossammaparast. I'm very excited to be able to present these two wonderful poets to you. I've really enjoyed the latest volumes that they've brought out in the last 12 months. And I hope you got a glass of wine and, you know, you're rugged up, or if you're not, if you're in Queensland, and you take a seat and enjoy an evening with these two wonderful poets. Our first reader tonight is Marjon. Marjon Mossammaparast is a secondary school English teacher in Melbourne. Her first collection of poetry, That Sight, was released by the wonderful Kent McCarter at Cordite Books, and it won the 2019 Mary Gilmore Award and was shortlisted for the 2019 Queensland Lit Awards and commended in the 2018 Anne Elder Award. Her second volume is And to Ecstasy, which was just released in March through Upswell Publishing. Marjon has lived in Iran, Italy, China, and Macau. So if you could virtually put your hands together and welcome Marjon. Over to you, Marjon.
Thank you so much, Shane, and thank you to everyone for tuning in this evening. I'm going to read a few poems, firstly from That Sight, and then I will hopefully read a couple of poems straddling the two collections, and then move into a few poems from this latest collection that's just come out. So I hope you enjoy. This first poem from That Sight is called Lapsed Believer. I take God apart like an art form. Still he rises, infused into the core of Byzantium. Countered and encountered, soared in with devil, the periscopic eye of man. Indefatigable standard unrolled, not in black flag or collar, but with no name to speak. The is, was, and wilt unplanted for a legion of people, not out nor in. And in the earth it trembles, and in Kosciuszko it shakes, and it comes to pass. Every day the distant reach through dusty works of faith, prostrations, the general mutiny, the intractability of the undying, animating the question, fragmenting man. Whatever lies between them, heaven and hell, the stream and fire, lies between two hands. The second poem from this collection is called The Other. Edited out of history, Sappho re-emerges in a vast papyrus field in a pan-African continent and by the side of a ceramic jug. Led by her eastern nose, she is edged to cliff, launching her body ship onto rocks, supposedly all that ugliness, as afterwards Bertha dances atop the roof, flaming, hideously, darkly, stepping outside it, rubbing them in it as her arms flail. The other will fling it back, bring the whole house down, her face cubist green, her open eyes pointing the finger. Or it will be the eternal cunt from which you've dropped darkly and hideous, stretching into the past, future, while you heave into the origine du monde, sister wives of the great-grandmother girls married at 9, nodding now to the rebalancing act. This next one is called Mountain Ash. Brendan fells mountain ash to log, At the mill, sawdust and machine make plank, plank. Splinters of shavings a swarm storming where I am the eye. My feet, my face gather wood. From the forest hill to the house, the short travel of the tree. And yet, Brendan points up, saying, that one there's about 300 years old. A hollow where shell ducks nest, flying out with sunrise. I'm trying to reconcile two timbers, inhaling the fresh cut that smells of moisture and the give of living, when, in the truck, his 14-year-old sleepy girl grinds us up stubborn track Brendan has flattened through his land, which is bush. Whose bush are we bashing now? The wombat holes and platypus springs, the dead lightning tree. Even, I am told, Leadbeater's fairy, though I don't want the greenies to find out I've seen 'em here. Brendan fells mountain ash to log, relocating deep gully ferns for neo weddings held on forest lawns where bellbirds are still and ring a pool of clear water. Later, tonight in my throat, I cough up dust on my bed in little boxed suburbia. Cities down the road as brick and steel press ceiling, and remember flushing 3 rosellas from the ash that afternoon, 3 quick crimson brush strokes against Lim Street sky. Did you see the birds coming down? Brendan wanted to know. Yes, I saw red bellies and blue wings, dappled things. I heard high kookaburras raining as I inspected the stone pizza oven Brendan assembled from a kit. I put it together, but the bricks were pre-cut, he concedes, with slight embarrassed tone. I turn to the house he has raised with 2 hands, this Italian-coloured man and his diamond eyes, and rewind. All the world is that first clearing in the tree of man, and the 14-year-old tottering at the edge of the dam is transported into myth, her bed hair the dream of pioneers. Day becomes inscrutable as the hand of man fashioning timber. Timber becomes the gift of the tree bearing 100 men, even the tractor. I am not ornamental. The whole mountain echoes across strawberry rows and dead glazed wombats to the top of St. Leo's Ridge. This next one is called Winter Solstice, and it was written actually on the winter solstice as I returned from a walk. My body is lean and polished against the brooding flat press of afternoon light and the mute standstill of houses, apartments wrapped in silent domestic stories like risen catacombs. A pristine magic of darkness incrementally takes over birds, the outreach knuckles of plains, and with tomorrow, a lengthening that will stretch the quiet intuition of leaves. What can devastate this circle? Solstice, equinox, solstice, equinox, solstice. Much as one hand is raised to another, shaken, pounding, then folded around the frail shoulders of a grandfather who waits at the crossing, older now. He waits until another day that has no choice eddies and rebounds, the wars he has seen, his mother married on a horse. He waits at the crossing where the babe and babe meet with a last trembling, knowing that standstill is a house, a notion, that the line is a notion, one life is a notion. This bare plain, my humming body is a notion, that what is true is orbital, quantum or classic, not despairing bombs, crossing step, step to the other side. My body is a temple breaking open with light. I am luminous, flooded, stained glass effusion, Sagrada Familia, jogging towards fragile, singing, strong. I am middle ear, shell spiraling, form married to intent. A yellow suffusion, brilliant, God entering, I itself again, again, again. This last one that I will read from this collection is called The Animals, the World. The otter, the doe, the spotted giraffe, the girl with the soft neck on my pillow, the bars of the cage, the long open grass, the gash, the feet stampeding and the yellow flowers shutting their eyes, green finch wings and the boy on the shore, his crimson throat and the waves over and over. The glass amber eyes, the honey tree, the harlequin doll, the smashing of the mirror and standing behind it, crab apples and rock crabs in the rock pool, crabs in the transverse gate that defies the crush of tourists in the gallery, the instinct of the red spider living a day and the plumes of a Saturday night rising like the mating rituals of flamingos, a nest, a hive, a swarm of curses from the river, from the croc peering through mud flats, and you, that stately ibis landing in the blue dells between our habitations, unnamed. No one owns this ark, congregating, spitting, shoving, honking, and the monkey scratching at the armpits with the eponymous who looks so much after all like that man. I'll read a couple of pieces now. They've been published elsewhere, but not in either of the collections. This first one is called Non è Napoli, which means it's not Napoli. Vesuvius lives in all the windows of Napoli. Every day his 100 eyes see grandfathers shuffle about, draining the spaghetti, and take one coffee after, sitting at tables where all the girls have gone, pressed into peacock feathers. They see his men sequestered in stiff living rooms of the north, where at noon they duly twirl a loaf of bread and skip over garbage to the fringe of Capri, nursing their livers and the French for an ass to hold on to. Vesuvius lives in all the windows of the heart of Napoli, peering through vow drops, the dark terrone blood that rushes to the head and erupts in the fist of lovemaking, as it did in Pompeii, so you can never touch a lentil or leave the sweet hot mess of the body that was once yours, returning the gaze in Roma, Tortona, the cinemaplex of the Como, where Serena Rossi, like a boss, is crooning, Come bello che si tornato, and you are swept in torrents of pomodoro to the hankering caldera of his soul, ready to renounce east and west. This next one is called And God Said, and it's actually referencing Baha'u'llah, who is the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, who was born in Iran in 1817, and whose message of the oneness of humanity is the central tenet of the Baha'i faith. And God said, once I gazed upon your face on the throne of justice. You were seated as man, who is spirit being, emanating the sun, wrapped in corporeal cloak, around whose centre the atom circles in perpetual closed orbit. I am the atom, blind, circling and circling, approximating, then falling away, held in sway through the centripetal force of your light. Luminary that transmutes my heart to flame, it is by your birth that I am born unto the day and the world and these arcs of animals and all the green living things that reverberate with a word of your word. Your birth is my birth, like your breath takes me from breath to breath until I enter your white city with my feet that are of dust and a name made empty of itself. I celebrate your birth and your eternity, not with song, but with a token of my life when I extend this tenuous hand to stranger and the thief, whose blue eyes replicate the eye of God. I can speak your name only in translation through the kindness which is our universal human tongue. I find you daily and entire wherever there is a mountain, and I see through the symbol of the stone into the immovable reality which is your neck, bowed by the ignorance of our own humanity with your heavy chain of Christ. light giver, day star, glory, whose dedication is inscribed in every book, whose black locks are brilliant tendrils in the mouth of a surging sea. We are fireflies, bearing for a moment the flicker of your resplendent revelation. And finally, I'll read a few from And to Ecstasy, which is written in 3 parts. So this first poem is the opening poem of There. It's called Prologue. And all we need is to cross that gulf from here, where men grow soft and widen under the white starched dress, flat phalanx of Arabia out of which no primordial gods rose, where gold is the thing with feathers, diamonds make the sky. I am orphaned of my countries, turning north to a city that burned 40 years ago, turning south to a land fanned by hellfire, chokeholds of fuel, fuel, fuel. In relation to neither man nor woman, I breathe the momentary. Again, the hills have pinned me at the armpits, a claustrophobia of steep rise. Sheep field, cow paddock, parallel earth with her grazing animals, the dry and wet obliquely resonant. I remember distant brown cattle along the Tambo that probably have burnt out now. Heath and moorland bisect the lakes on the way to Penrith, but it's the apocalypse in my thoughts, charred koala tufts that break this green relief. A northern season still in equilibrium. It's cinders of kangaroo in my eye, embers shaking paradise out of trees. Forget even the homes on fire that may be rebuilt. It's the open of hand and the destroyer on the doorstep, in the backyard of homespun refugees. It's earth that has been ground, speaking the language of unheeded waterfalls, river runs, voices left to glow incandescent in gullies, on once verdant skin of the long drawn back. Together we suffer the Cartesian split. Sea and land both burn, body and fish. That you could see, whipped by flame, how beautiful it is to have an empty centre, not filled with names, but where rain falls and spirit is the being moving hands. O white, dangerous, filled circumference, surf closing in, heaven and hell is inside everything. On Tehran's streets, a slow displacement nudging the growing body closer to a future beyond burning flares in the sky. Radiant cells of children burst alight in air. What seems like silence is a voice singing to itself above the spectacle of flame. One day we will sweep in chorus these ashen headstones of our unremitting countries. Natarsid, natarsid, ma hame ba ham hastim. Betarsid, betarsid, ma hame ba ham hastim. Venice is overflowing with the moon. The grocery boat arrives. 2 fishmongers set up in the square. Dogs are baying at the slapping of tides. I worry, of course, about how I am to find my way home when upon the edge of every jetty I am called to wade into the mouth of a beautiful oblivion. That Pisa could remain in hand. The upturned soils of Tortona's fields yield their high grasses. Lifetimes cycling through rolled bales of hay, cypress lanes. That we are not prisoner to flux that cannot resolve the overt tilling. That I can love the sun enough sufficiently for here and there to exist in communion, withstanding the flanks of all the animals. This one's from the Here section. I feel the thickness of it lately. Landmass thick like an anchor in the sea. Thick air driving towards Geelong. My car moves through, on thickness. yu-yangs erased by thickness. I can make out the outline of things the way people can after a war or a revelation. In lawn, the pier is smudged in haze. Death is thick in the beams of the church. Fish rot between rocks. I don't know if I still love this country that holds back the rain or rains its red heart. I am always thinking of mountains. The skin of the earth is grass, countries rippling with separation, whole swathes declaring the guts. And I'll read one or a couple of final poems from the last section of this collection, which is called Field. This one's called Quantum. That you are there and I am here, each a monad of being, divisible by planes. That I am there and you are here, alive in essential motion, contingent on these continents. Two non-local counterparts to everything adding also, indeterminate of time. Like what flashes between us on a journey, midnight's ascent on the wings of the elusive horse, from one temple to another, traversing the lightning fields of our complementarity, where we are entangled, human and human, truth and form, uncertain how we can be more than this, how we manifest the numinous passing clouds. And the final poem that I'll read is a short one. This one's called Scale. When the mountain spoke, it was to the leaf. This is what dying will be like. To gauge what is narrow with your own pass, the fall to folded earth from these sky streams, the distance between flat animus and the arc of a belly of antelope fathoming a river, working yourself into the vastness of a vein and turning your green north. This is what living will be like, synthesizing. Thank you, everyone.
Someone in the comments suggested that your voice was a soothing meditation, which I have to agree with. I thought that was wonderful, transporting, and thank you so much for sharing your work. And I really liked the Baha'i poem as well. I thought that was fantastic. So it's lovely to hear.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks to Marjon, and I hope you're all loudly cheering / sipping wine or doing whatever you're doing in the comfort of your own home, because that was really fantastic. But there's more. We're very lucky also to have joining us Lucy Van. And Lucy Van writes poetry and criticism. She's been a writer in residence at Overland in 2019-20 and is an honorary fellow at the University of Melbourne. Her first poetry collection was called The Open, and that comes from Cordite Books. It was longlisted for the Stella Prize, but if you are able to get your hands on it, I highly recommend it. And Marjon's as well. These are really, really stunningly good collections, and we're very, very lucky in Australia to have such a rich, rich group of poets and a rich group of poetry coming out at the moment. But anyway, I'll hand over now to Lucy Van. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you, Shane. Do I sound okay? I can hear an echo. It's good. Marjon, you were beautiful and you're incredible. I'd like to read from The Open to start with, and if I leave myself time, I might read the beginning of a new work. This is from the first section of The Open. It's the 6th poem. Most of your life you were coming home. You turn the last corner, look for the blue fence, blue roof. All the while you were leaving, you try to remember the word exposition. Most of you left headwind, suddenly an adverb best applied to tides, The ocean on a roll today, rolling for conversations, lapping at revelations, establishing shots on the rocks, staring back like listening to the words like waving, containing, docking, stripping, attacking, rolling, smoko. I'm going to just keep reading through this section. This is the 7th poem. This became our regular walk around Huang Kiem. When I looked later on the map, I saw that it was a very indirect and impractical route. By going this way, we missed many places of significance. For example, by going this way, we didn't see the gatehouse to the former Lao Ho prison, but instead saw Hanoi Tower, which was on the side facing Quan Su, the third road we took. Duang Le Duang, left. Li Tong Kiet, left. Quan Su, right. Hyang Bong, which becomes Hyang Gai, Popeyes. This is poem number 8. Still running, Daphne cried out to her father, "Change me," and we came. That was all part of our plan. We were expected to come to the house and to spend a few days and nights there. That was all a big part of it. But it turned out that there was this difficulty and this problem, and just when we thought there would be introductions, he left. And we couldn't sense what it was going to be like, and I didn't know the name of the aunt on the hospital bed, so I didn't know how to ask if she was okay or if there was something I could do, and I didn't want to waste everybody's time with all my questions because it seems like that's all I had, questions and time, and it had happened before when my cousin said, "When I first saw you, I hated you." And the reason I never learnt the language was no one ever taught me, and maybe that's a mental illness thing, not a migration thing. And it's all a big joke when one of my uncles points a finger into my shoulder and says with a deliberate pause, "I hear you're a doctor of poetry." When we were there, we didn't know where to be, but maybe that was because we didn't know that to want to be there, we had to be looking forward to it. We were in the way at the shop in the front with the door to the street kept wide open, so sometimes I thought relatives were my auntie's customers. And we were taking up room in the room behind that bit because everyone kept getting up. And when we tried to join them watching television and staring at the bananas, and I didn't know what the way was to get a glass of water because it always seemed wrong or rude, very rude, way past the kitchen, so we just stayed in bed. He built this house and oh, I don't understand the back of the house. No, we didn't have a rich experience. That's your thing. We slipped away. I have to apologize for the sound of a crying baby. She's completely fine. If you can hear her, she's with her dad, but she's not supposed to be crying right now. I'm going to keep going and read poem number 9. Not so near the Continental Palace Hotel, which Graham Greene monumentalized. A little closer to Saigon Post Office, where Duong Van Nho, the last public letter writer, is still at work. About a 30-minute walk straight down Soviet Nye Tin from our family's house, near the school that was formerly the Collège des Jeunes Filles Indigènes, adjacent to the Jardin de la Ville, which was made after French settlers were encouraged to take exercise. Cercle Sportif was charging 500 piastres for annual membership when it relocated here in 1905. By 1926, one could confidently assert that Saigon had a club worthy of a colony. Elegant balls were held yearly, hosted at the Continental. The South Vietnamese politician Duong Van Minh visited in the 1960s. He was known to be a skillful tennis player. Later, Cercle Sportif becomes the Labour Culture Palace. For anyone who thinks with their ears, Cercle Sportif becomes Circle K, a business on a mission to take care of people's time. This is private terminology. We are on a mission to take care of people's time. It has something to do with the ability to arrive and leave. You're never there long unless invited by someone more permanent. Only indirectly, the woman chooses her own work. When she walks into the back of the shop, I don't know how to ask her to come back. Poem number 11. Because I can't ask anyone, and because I must leave everyone intact, or because I prefer not to ask. 12. Vincom has the cleanest windows in the world. We have a beautiful, clean centre. We take photos of ourselves in front of the windows of Giordano, Furla, Aldo, in front of the windows of H&M, in front of the windows of Marks and Spencer. Historical records show that we were born into a poor family. Due to accurate warehouse management and payroll, we have wrap and roll, Mochi, Mango, Bossini, Gucci. Due to construction management, we have windows, walls, floors, miracles. 13. The day after we have dinner at Vincom, I ask Tree if his mum likes cake. That morning, I had seen cakes at a shop called Tous les Jours, which is also in Vincom on the basement level B2. I could get a whole cake, I reasoned, or an assortment of smaller cakes. What should I get her as a departing gift, I mean? In soft, careful English, he says, just say goodbye, which I know as soon as he says it, I won't do. Tree the same afternoon, mooning around our hotel with its emperor's bed, made of 2 king-sized beds pushed together, says, I feel sad because I think you didn't have a good time here. I am so embarrassed about the size of the bed. He looks out of the window and tells me he lives somewhere far from District 1. Okay, now I'm going to flick to the 3rd section and just read a couple of poems from that before getting to the last work out of the book. The surface is the most important thing in tennis. The surface determines the speed and bounce of the ball. The surface determines the movement of the player coming to hit it. We would like to show you the specific steps to a court being constructed. On site, the work begins. Frequently, the trees and foliage have to be removed from the site due to topographic constraints. Excavation and suspension are often necessary to level the playing area. To paint it all is a bit time-consuming. It's not automatic, obviously. You can see. It's not done by a machine, so it's very hands-on. To resurface the courts every year, to clean them with high pressure. To then go through a process of 3 applications on every court must be the same. It's all a bit labour intensive. And speed. Speed is a critical part. Speed is the critical part. Labour is the absolute. Speed is the absolute. The 3rd poem of this section. Or depict the Australian terrain. From a high angle, the camera records a scene into which a lone man enters. The commentary box, déjà vu all over again. The man as arriviste, the man as case in point, an enigmatic figure that sometimes seems to be working, the man with miles in his legs. Flat through the court, but a great redirector of the tennis ball with 40% of his wins against top tenors. He's playing about as well as he can without hitting a cold winner. The problem is, how long can he keep serving like that? Close the game when it's 40-30. At this moment, I write this sentence. Australians are more emotional now. The court is a discursive space created by finding the first serve. The first game of the second set has taken on a huge significance. The fight is all-consuming. He introduces the drop shot. the errors are coming. What does it all mean? A complex knowledge that turns on margins constructed by planners and geographers. This image is structured around a vertical marker and a horizontal marker. Each centers the space. It is an unbelievable exchange. Gestures, numbers, averages with the existence of general laws, parity and unity, a taste of soil, a distant land. I have an exemplary view. I am a cultivated observer. He wanders onto the court, a topographical parenthesis or rare, a charismatic Australian. Describing a way of clairvoyance, the commentary box. I think it's a night we don't dwell on things, life moves on. I take small steps, then I take a long stride with my foot on this idea. This is the 5th poem from this section. Even though it is the longest match he's ever played, we don't watch Nick Kyrgios win his 5-setter. We flick over to Medvedev and Popyrin and contemplate skinny males instead. Medvedev plays the ball flat when he wants to and he knows how to run to the back of the court. What makes this game appealing is that you can be way ahead for a while. I am conscious of my house, of how tidy it is and quiet and empty, and is my carpet acrylic? I move around its piles of books, fake underarm serve, followed by a wrecking ball. And this is the 7th poem. This is the last poem I'll read from this book. In the second men's semi-finals, there are 2 beautiful males, les beaux boys, warming up the court. After several minutes watching the player profiles, my mother says, gravely, "They're both very good looking." We were determined to know these beings. This is a totally female principle of gratification, knowing beings. This was our daily work, this agricultural labour, curious all summer to make this surface produce this pulse. Thoreau said he was determined to know beans, the bean field being a pun for the being field, this pun alluding to a relation to land set out by the Georgic, being guaranteed by turning land to profit. Though he says, I was much slower and much more intimate with my beans than usual. Here is the responsible, non-dreamer, working only for tropes and commentary in the only open and cultivated field. As I have little experience with this sort of work, there is not yet any commentary. So if you'll permit me, I'm going to read something it's not really ready. And I've just, I haven't really decided if it works or not, but I can't resist reading it tonight. I was inspired by the last word of another poem. The last word pronounced in French is, I guess, vérition, or vérition, we might say in English. The word is from Aimé Césaire's notebook. I'll just start. Vérition, an untranslatable term Césaire used to indicate a kind of sweeping. Not really. It was a term to indicate the double jouissance of licking words over and over again. But that is not unlike sweeping, and sweeping is not unlike action painting. Your heft and back pushing bristles as they sound off, marking the floor with a tacky rub or licking the ground over and over again. Maybe we could buy a new broom at Bunnings. The question hovers for minutes, days. Maybe we could find ourselves licking the ground at the interval between days, between minutes, between the 59 and the 0. What is the interval between days? Between night and day. Le petit matin, Césaire called it, which Derek Walcott translates and I find plausible as 4-day morning. Cognitive drowning or a tortured landscape in 4-day morning then. Drowning before or at the 4 of the 0, which is day. What I mean is that this is not the only thing tethered to the 4 of a 0 thing, the 4-day thing, which is not only an aesthetic thing, and the inclusion of human references here will not be a decorative thing, except the conclusion here might be decorative, assuming the human will have already existed, an already existing thing. I can't open it, I say, when I can't open a file or a link, when I don't have the password anymore. I can't open it anymore, I say. But then I thought I was in a landscape or a countryside. The file or the link was also in the countryside. What if I don't know how to get to the countryside? How do you open out there? What if I don't know the passwords? What if I don't know the countryside? Which countryside? The institutional countryside. It has disordered my relationship with passwords. What if I can't file or link or open passwords in the countryside? What is the countryside password to open? Edouard Glissant says, I'm less interested in your origins in the countryside than in how you would draw a tree, for instance, which is no longer genealogical nor biographical when the picture includes the soil, the manure, the grasses, the birds, the water in the air, the water in the ground, the water in the leaves, the adjacent trees, all the condensation from all the leaves, the clouds humming in the blue hinterland? Or is it biographical but no longer intimate? Or is it intimate but no longer personal? That is, no longer personal. This is not Glissant talking anymore. This is someone else. This would be me. The notion of privacy is an intensely held public notion, quite the sacred notion, if it is that a notion can be talked about as sacred. This morning, me and my notion tentatively called the magistrate's court, passing through a number of institutional countrysides into the sacred countryside where the private matter could be dealt with. Then, more boldly, we called carpet court. We ordered 59 kilometres of squared carpet. We wanted to lay it down and lick the ground over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Loved the nascent critic in the background through the beginning of your reading. I think, or maybe your ultimate fan. I loved the range of material there. Tennis, Vietnam, of course they go together perfectly. And thank you for that wonderful sharing of some new work at the end, which I think is absolutely fantastic and promising. So we really appreciate it. Well, I'd like to say a big thank you to our 2 readers for tonight, Marjon Mossammaparast and Lucy Van. I think you'll agree that they were wonderful readings, and it's very satisfying to have our online program be so rich and have such wonderful poets involved in it. Of course, what is all this is leading up to is our live festival, which is happening in June 3 to 5 at the Judith Wright Centre in Brisbane, Mianjin. So we hope if you've enjoyed some of the things that you've seen online, that you can join us then. Next online thing, we have on Sunday, we have a workshop with Scott Patrick Mitchell. So if you wanted to be involved in that, it's free if you're a festival pass holder, and there is a cost if you aren't. On the Poetics of Grief, that's happening on Sunday. And the next Tuesday is our teaching poetry panel, which has had a great deal of interest. And we're really looking forward to hearing from poets and practitioners about how poetry might be taught in educational settings. I think that's it. And I really appreciate you joining in, and I'd love to see you again. But from me, my name is Shane Strange, and I will see you later on. Take care, everybody.